Hello, I'm Claire Snowden, darling.
I'm Laura Knowles.
And we are going to talk to you today about abuse. There's shocking, it was out today actually, a shocking increase in calls around domestic violence. On a
Mm,
25% increase in calls about domestic
up
violence.
25%. There was also an article about China. China's, um, uh, I think it was the abuse that was recorded was tripled.
As has, and the divorce rate has increased as well after lockdown. The divorce rate has increased. So
Well, I think that this situation that we're in, this lockdown with COVID-19, I think it does shine a light on all areas of our life, whether we look at them in a more positive light and say, this is great, my life is great, or it highlights what needs changing.
yeah, I absolutely agree. So there is obviously a big spectrum when it comes to abuse, and obviously domestic violence being, quite near the top of that. And again, a really awful, challenging situation for anyone in it. And, my absolute heartfelt support and best wishes, and, because it is a really challenging one. And there are many different types of abuse. And that's kind of one of the things that we wanted to talk about today. We wanted to talk about probably the other end of that scale and that spectrum, which is toxic relationships, kind of toxic language, and that low level abuse. That's what we wanted to talk about, because that is very often what we see in our work, in our clinics. It's what we are supporting people to navigate through, and even educating people to be able to see. Because a lot of the time we don't see abuse that's happening, or toxicity. And for me, there's a really fine line. We can talk something toxic, which is like, oh yeah, I know this lipstick's got toxic chemicals on it, but I'm going to put it on when I go out because it makes me feel good. I'm kind of, yeah, it's crap for me, but I'm choosing it. And abuse, which feels different. And that fine line, it feels similar to the social drinking is okay, but it can also really, tip into alcoholism. It's a really fine line, that balance between something that's a bit toxic and borderline abusive. And that's kind of what we wanted to discuss today, was that edge, didn't we?
Absolutely. I think one of the difficulties that we're looking at when it comes to that very low level abuse is that a number of the symptoms that someone might be experiencing if they are in a low level abusive relationship can be something that you wouldn't associate with an abusive relationship. So they can be anxiety, fear, low self-esteem, low confidence, depression. And I mean, it's a big thing that we're having to deal with in society anyway. So we wouldn't necessarily go, okay, well, I'm feeling this really low self-esteem because of my partner, because he's not doing anything, he's not hitting me. But actually the language that they're using, their control, the manipulation, some of the ways that the relationship has formed can actually be quite toxic, like you say.
Yeah, really, really. And both ways, by the way. This is absolutely not gender specific. And in fact, some of the abuse I've seen towards men, horrendous, just absolutely horrendous. So we're in no way talking about this in any kind of gender. So I just want to make that really clear right from the outset, because I think predominantly, we talk a lot about women's hormones. Our demographic is often more women than men, but I just want to make it really clear, because I've definitely seen it. In fact, funnily enough, I was rewatching some of the Brené Brown TED Talks yesterday, and I haven't seen them, I haven't sat and watched them for a while. And she mentioned, in one of her talks, she mentioned something where I went, Do you know what? These days, I look at that differently and I would see that as low level abuse. She was telling a story about how she'd been at a book signing and a man came up to her and said, why don't you write about men? And she said, I don't work with men. And he says, well, that's convenient. And he went on to tell her a story and said, you've just signed books there for my wife and 3 daughters. And he says, about the power of vulnerability. He said, but if for 1 second, I even showed, I'm paraphrasing, this is the feeling behind it, not what she actually says, but she says it probably much more eloquently. But if even for 1 second I showed a chink in my armor, they're not going to let me down off that white horse. There is no space available for me to be vulnerable, authentic, not okay. And so these days, I actually look at that as, if you're constantly having to hold up an air of project an image of perfection, because on the other side of that is, you're not good enough, you're not okay, why aren't you doing more, why aren't you working harder? I actually think that's abusive. And that, whether that be around, with women, again, this is Brené Brown research, with women, it tends to be around nailing everything that they set out to do. So the career and the family, but also self-image is a huge, huge thing. So if in any way, shape or form, you are getting pressure about that the way you look isn't okay, I'd be questioning that. And on the flip side with men, it's always around upholding, being emotionally in control, emotionally controlled, and success and status. And so again, for men, if there's no space for you to just go, I'm not okay, if you're constantly being, absolutely hounded, I would these days be saying that's low-level abuse, because there's no space to be authentic and no space to be vulnerable. But we do tend to see abuse as being, I'm being hit, I'm being or ridiculed, like really ridiculed, like nasty, vindictive language. But I even see the low-level stuff. I think that actually, when we get to the point in a relationship where we are disrespecting each other enough to even use language like, you're a dick, you're a bitch, you're those kind of things, I'm like, I feel the ouch in that. I feel the ouch in that from a place of the lack of respect. And as soon as we're in anywhere that there's lack of respect, that's toxic danger zone.
I think something to become aware of is when one partner or both partners are trying to wound the other one from a place of pain. So it's that taking someone down, if you're feeling so uncomfortable and so wretched that you are willing to wound the person that you're closest to bring them down to that level. I think that really, really needs looking at. The other one that I wanted to mention that I've seen in the clinic, which I think a lot of people don't necessarily notice, but it's a classic sign of what I would call abuse, and that's gaslighting. And gaslighting is, it's redefining someone's reality. It's that, no, you're crazy. You're crazy. No, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. And so if you keep getting those messages where you go, hang on a minute, the way that I understood that. I mean, it's great to have that. Okay, right, because maybe you've received the information in a way that wasn't communicated clearly. But if you keep getting that message that your partner is saying, no, you're crazy, no, you're wrong, I didn't say that, you're making this up, if you're getting those constant messages, it's definitely something to look at, because that can undermine our intuition, our reality, our
sense of self.
The world, absolutely, sense of self. And it can be really destabilizing. And when there is an abusive relationship, that destabilization is designed for manipulation and control. Yes. So it's really worth questioning if you're getting that kind of situation.
Oh, I hate gaslighting.
Oh, I see it quite a lot, actually. I hear of it quite a lot, and it's not necessarily noticed or picked up on, because what can happen is that the person who's being gaslighted can be, you still there?
Yeah.
The person who is being gaslighted blames himself.
Yeah.
Goes, it's
oh
me.
no, I'm just being stupid. I'm just being
Oh,
stupid. And so that's the thing, is because it then becomes a self-attack, that's where the control and manipulation comes in, because as soon as the rug is pulled out from someone's sense of self and certainty, yeah, now we've got all of the power and all of the control. So goalpost changing as well, you know, that's a biggie. You know, well, I thought you said that this was going to happen this week. Well, no, that's going to happen whenever. So it's like if you're constantly getting someone to behave in a certain way for a certain amount of time, but then that goalpost changes and then that goalpost changes, it becomes, you know, very difficult. Conditional love as well. Well, I'd love you more. I'd fancy you more. You know, if you loved me, it's like all of this kind of language is creating a web, like a tangled web of toxicity. And I actually take it a step further these days. And I think, you know, personally, I've been, my big journey was learning what abuse meant to me and how to put boundaries in place to never live that way again. Because I've managed to experience quite a lot of it before I learned that that was, you know, a situation I kept repeatedly getting myself back into. Very lucky to say not domestic violence, but emotional abuse. And one of the biggies for me now is even being shouted at, because I've got to a point where I've done so much work and my friendship group have done so much work that we would never, it's like you were saying, it's that discharging at someone to bring them down. I would never take all of my emotions and throw them at someone else's door just to get them out of me because I don't know what to do with them. I would go away and process those. So using the tools, like the tools we teach on our courses, with a counsellor, with my processing platform, with, you know, with other people, and then go back in a situation where I'm not hot, where I'm not still triggered, to have a conversation with that person to find out what went on for them. As soon as someone's feeling pretty crap and they just want to bring you down, it's like you were saying earlier, we call that being like you're in the boat and someone's drowning and they're trying to pull you into the water with them. As soon as that happens, for me, that's an absolute boundary. And it's like, no, that's low level abuse, because if you get someone who's shouting at you, then that can just escalate pretty quickly. That's going to become name calling. That's going to become disrespect. And as soon as we start allowing even those low level things, we're just laying the groundwork for some, you know, bigger abuse, gaslighting, lying, manipulation, control.
I think the difficulty with what we're dealing with at the moment with the whole COVID-19 situation is that it is emotionally challenging.
Really?
It's bringing it all up. It's bringing up the anxiety, the fear, the frustration, the boredom. These are real, you know, we're all experiencing it. And we're all caged in our little boxes with all of this emotion going on. And so where does it go? What can we do with it?
It's a really good question. What can we do with it?
What can we do with it? Because this is what, when we're getting into arguments with our partners, especially if we're having arguments more now because we're all locked up in our little boxes, you know, these emotions are absolutely natural. And finding a way of being able to be with these emotions, express these emotions, but not at someone, I think is so important.
Right. So healthy expressions of emotions. So it's when we are offloading on someone that, for me, that's an issue. Or when someone's trying to offload onto me, that's an issue. And it's taken me, I'm going to be honest, it has taken me, maybe I'm a really slow learner, but it has taken me a very long time to learn not to just allow that to happen, to actually start going, well, I really hear that that's a difficult situation for you. That's definitely something to look at. I'm able to support you in this way or in that way, like actually learning when it's my place and when it's not my place. And we talk quite a lot about people pleasing. Like, we are brought up as a society to people please, you know, but parents and schools don't bring us up to, you know, generally to be able to sort of stand there and argue back. Like, selfishness is seen as a bad thing. And what we spend so much of our time in clinic doing is teaching people how to put their oxygen masks on first. You know, that is actually the epitome of selfishness. But it's so important. We have got to put ourselves first, because as soon as we're running on empty, we've got nothing left to give. So we teach selfishness, but not self-absorbedness. That's the difference, isn't it? So because we don't teach that, people don't know until they have to learn, and very often people don't learn. So I would be saying that there are healthy expressions of emotions, and we can talk about those. If you are someone who does that kind of stuff and just wants someone in that choppy water with you, definitely an opportunity to look at how to not do that. Like, these are all just behaviors. None of this makes us unlovable. Our behaviors are coming from our wounding. So conversely, we actually need to find ways to fill in the void of love, right? Like, it's like, you know, that's the statistic or the phrase of, it's people who are abused who become the abusers. Like, it's broken people that break other people. So whilst I'm not saying you have to find, if you've been abused, you're the one that has to find the compassion for that person. That might not be your job, but ultimately we can learn how to fill in the massive voids in us of self-love, of where we've been abused before. It's our job to fill that void. So if you are the person who shouts, screams, nags, goes on, and I say this because I used to do it, then the opportunity is for you to do the journey of going within. Absolutely. And we can talk about healthy expressions of emotion. If you are the person on the receiving end, then your job is to learn boundaries. It's to learn the self-love to go, that's not okay for me. That behavior isn't okay for me. And, you know, we need to look at a different way. I'm just going to reiterate that if you are in a domestic violence situation, there are many more well-trained people to advise you on dealing with your situation. We are talking about low-level toxicity that permeates through so many relationships. You might be shouting at your children, they might be shouting at you. I am not talking about the situations that could end up in physical violence. I have not trained to work in those situations, and I would definitely be saying, you know, that is why there are trained professionals to advise you. So I'll be really clear on that. However, if you're in the situations where you are, you know, just constantly shouting at people or being shouted at, okay, there's some work here that we can do.
Yeah, I agree. When I've had cases of domestic violence in my clinic, I do refer on.
Yeah,
I agree with that. And I wanted to talk to, when you said maybe I'm a slow learner, then I must be a slow learner too, because I don't know anybody who has started this journey and just got it and gone, that was so easy, because this is core to who we are. A lot of this work is unpicking behaviors, core beliefs, things that happened in our childhood. This is stuff that is imprinted in us, that these repeated patterns that we have maybe lived with for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, they take some unpicking, and it can be incredibly uncomfortable.
Really
it really does. And it's not a linear, okay, well I'm here and then I'm going to do this work and then I'm going to be here. It doesn't tend to work that way. It's, okay, I'm here, and then I'm going to realize that, oh my God, all of this stuff, and I'm going to go backwards, and I'm going to go round. Emotional work is incredibly messy.
Oh, so messy, and takes practice and making a mess and practice and making a mess until one day you get it, and then the next day you don't. And it's all opportunity for learning and awareness, and how can I do it differently? But the difference is, and we talk about this so much in our immersives and in clinic, is in every situation. So we have a wound. We have wounds, right? There are actually only 5 core wounds of humanity, and they're pretty, you know, the biggies. I'm unlovable. I'm worthless. I'll be abandoned, betrayed, or injustice. There's some biggies, right? But we're all operating from them. But above the wounding, then is emotion. So the emotion might be fear, anxiety, frustration. It might be, what else? Self-criticism. Well, that'll be better. Sorry, ignore that one. Lack of self-love. That would be an emotion. So just that feeling. Above that is then a behavior. So we have, you know, then the behavior will be shouting, or being needy and clingy. It would be, you know, gaslighting. It would be any of these behaviors. So we can't just deal with the behavior. You have to learn how to drop down into the core wound and learn how to, can't fix that, learn how to love that, learn how to give that wound what it needs to no longer deliver an emotion and then a behavior. And it's like when somebody says something to us and we go to react, there is a moment, literally a millisecond before we react, where we have the opportunity to change our behaviors. We have the opportunity to change our behavior. This is ultimately what therapy is all about. It's like, it's not just about talking about childhood. It's like, okay, when I'm in this place, I'm about to make this decision. It doesn't even feel like a decision because it's instinctive to either, you know, shout at someone or call them a name. There is a split second before where I can choose to do something different. That's what we call being, you know, waking up. That's what we call coming into full consciousness. It's actually a process of really growing up and no longer reacting like we did as a child because we feel attacked, we feel defensive, we feel fearful. We're now going, okay, I can change the outcome of this situation. And that's kind of where we work and what we teach.
I think a great way of taking what you've just said is when we can start to have the awareness of, in a dynamic, what are the behaviors? Because it's very easy when we are triggered to start attacking someone's personality or attacking the person themselves, rather than being able to name, okay, right, I'm going into this behavior, they're going into this behavior. Okay, what needs to happen to change this? Because when we're attacking the person or we're attacking ourselves, there's little you can do with that. But when you identify what the behavior is, then you've got more of an opportunity to go, okay, right, this is where. And once you've identified exactly what you say, when you've identified the behavior, okay, what's the beliefs underneath that? What's the emotions that are going on underneath that? And then what are the core wounds that are triggering those beliefs and those emotions?
Yeah.
That's the exciting stuff, because then we can really start to work with it and start to create some real radical change in relationships.
Yeah. And we don't believe that anger is bad. In fact, so many people try and deny their anger, and then it all just spills out and leaks out. We're really big advocates for healthy expressions of any emotion, actually. It's just when we don't leak it out at somebody. So if I'm really angry and I'm, you know, rage, then I might go and beat the crap out of some cushions in my bedroom by myself. And then afterwards, be able to have a conversation with someone, go, wow, that anger, what that brought up in me. And like, this is healthy expressions of emotions. You know, there are so many. Having a really good cry, healthy expression of emotion. Having a really good cry to try and control someone to do something you want to do, not so great. The emotions themselves can have very healthy expressions. It's what we do with them.
Yeah, one of the concepts that I'm really playing with at the moment is this idea that when you come into conflict, to go away and process, which might be something that is really beneficial for you. But I'm playing with the idea that how would it be to be in that emotion, in that space, without attacking your partner, but how do you embody the emotion that's going on, the fear, the anxiety, the anger, whatever is alive in you? How do you stay present in that connection, but also be in that emotion without throwing that emotion at someone. It's a really, it's again, subtle lies.
Right? That's the ultimate in authenticity and vulnerability and radically honest connection. But you can only do that in a safe environment. You can't do that. You can't be there in all your pain, trying to process that if there is the opportunity the other person is going to be mocking you, attacking you, using that stuff. Like, that's when that's when we go, okay, there might be a dynamic in my relationship that needs to shift. I mean, your relationship necessarily has to end. It might just be that you both start writing a list of all the ways that this could be a bit toxic, and then start going, right, how do we navigate through this? How do we want this to be? How would we like it to look? And what do we do?
Remind me of something, because you were saying if you are someone who's watching this and maybe you're on the receiving end of being in a toxic relationship, and the work for you is the boundaries, the thing that came up for me is how difficult boundaries are to put in place when you feel unsafe. How difficult? It's almost near impossible, if not impossible. So the first piece of work before boundaries can even be explored is, how do I create safety in myself, in my environment, and work on that first before you can even have the voice to go, this isn't okay for me. It takes such courage to actually name when something's not okay.
Yeah, it does. Even in a safe environment, it can be excruciatingly exposing to go, I just want to bring something up that's not okay for me. Like, of course, it's excruciating. And this is where the work is. This is absolutely where the work is. And I'm such a believer that, our truth, our real truth, not our blurbed out, angry, controlling, vindictive truth. That's not what I'm talking about. Our real truth is such a gift to everyone, because your partner might not know that they're in that behavior. They might not know that they're trying to drag you into the water, or they're being quite, they might not know. And by you giving them that information, they have the opportunity to change it. And they might then give you information about your behavior that gives you the opportunity to change it. This is how the world goes round, right? This is how we start to make it a better place, is by actually not colluding with crappy behavior. But we're never taught not to deal with crappy behavior. We get, the government lies to us. We get lies or half-truths from the medical model. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So it takes real courage to go, kind of not how I want to live.
Oh, it's a huge subject. It's huge.
Huge. So, yeah, again, any kind of real domestic violence, please refer to the proper authorities and get the support that you need, please. And I know that in itself takes huge amounts of courage, but I know there's a lot of charities out there, and also the police. And for people where it's just like the niggles and you're arguing and you annoy each other, maybe rather than divorce rate going through the roof, there's an opportunity to actually make some real change. Or maybe it is divorce that's required, whichever it is. These are the opportunities to have some real honesty. Anything else?
I think I was just going to say, we're always looking for, I just want my relationship to be great. And when there's difficulty and we're niggling at each other and we're arguing, then, oh my God, I just want to make this stop. But actually, that's where the gold is. When the stuff comes up, oh, great, here it is. Stuff is in relationships. It's the nature of relationships. And so use it as information to bring yours and your partner's awareness to, there's something we need to work on here.
Yeah, and that for me, is the sign of what good looks like in a relationship, in a conscious relationship. It's both parties, even when feeling exposed, are able to stay present, exactly what you just said. I call it standing in the fire, because wow, it feels awful, but being able to stay in that fire, fully present with each other, working collectively for a win-win. That for me is what the absolute epitome of conscious relationship is. And if someone's going, oh God, I don't know what to do with it, right, I'm just going to have a bit of shout and scream and a storm off. Okay, that's where the work is. That's where the opportunity is.
Wow.
Great. Come back with any comments and questions. Yeah. And
we have our, at the moment, our Reclaim Your Life 10 module program, which is 12 hours, which goes into this in more depth and has a lot of homework to be done that you can use in relationships or in your life to be able to start looking at the triggers and the toxicity that you want to change. And we're doing it at a big discount at the moment through COVID-19 and in isolation, because it is an opportunity to this time to be able to go, okay, right, all my stuff is coming up and I've got time to look at it. So that's one of the reasons that we put the program out.
yeah,
So you can find that on our website.
you can indeed. Great. We'll be back next time.
Mm-hmm.